They were quite interesting linguistic details that, of course, I will not ask in the class, but in the test, but you should be aware of while you are doing this course. So there were quite a few linguistic details in the lectures, and I think you should go through that, but they would not be in the test. Okay. So you can see from the pattern from the last two quizzes what kind of questions would be there. Okay, so first of all, are there any questions based on the lectures till now or interaction sessions or anything? If not, then I will start with today's topic. No questions. Okay, can someone remind what we were doing last week?
LSTM. LSTMs and
Yes. LSTMs. Okay, so I hope you got some idea what do LSTMs do and what differentiates them from a normal RNN. So they are actually RNNs. You can, when people call LSTM, this is actually an RNN, but slightly more complicated architecture, more parameters. So I'm just trying to share it from my iPad. Now we talked about in the last 2 weeks, the lectures that I have shared, I had talked about two things mainly. I have talked about classification, I have talked about part of speech tagging. Now, how would you use an RNN for classification?
Sir, by building language models over every class, the learning weights for every class, and then using the test test sentence to check uh, which class is giving the same result in like.
Sure, yeah, this is too much. Yeah. People just don't do that. They don't do it that way. Yeah, that is easier for when you are using a non-neural model and you can use a unigram language model. So that is very similar to an I-based model that I discussed in the lectures also. But when you're using an RNN, you don't want to do that. There is a very simple way you can build a classifier.
So by having m outputs and the output with maximum value is considered the class for m classes.
Sir, by feeding in the tokens one by one and then aggregating all the outputs and then finally using that for aggregating the outputs and then using some sort of an MLP.
Instead of considering the output for each step, we take the hidden state of the last step and feed it to a feed-forward network, simple neural network, and get the output, a classifier.
Yeah. So that is the simplest thing that people do, that you take, somehow not able to, my iPad. Okay, I'll just use the slides. Still, I am not able to use the iPad. Okay, so I guess you can see my screen. So the most basic way is that yes, you simply take the final hidden layer and pass it through an MLP. So this is in contrast to how you were doing things earlier. You were trying to have a an output from every hidden layer. But what you're saying, I will take the entire sentence. Overall, I enjoyed the movie a lot. I keep on accumulating the hidden states, and I get the final hidden state and use that and directly pass it through in MLP like V transpose, right? And get my classification. I think I'll restart my iPad. So this is one of the most basic things. Now, what is a problem that you can see? So this is, if you want to use a classifier, use an RNN classifier, you can simply use that and that would work quite well. Now, do you see some issue with this?
May not work well for longer texts.
Of course, if you have longer text, right, what you are doing, you are composing everything into a final hidden layer. And remember again, when we say RNN, I mean, it can be RNN, it can be LSTM, it can be GRU, it can be any of these, right? So I may be using any of these, but what I'm doing, I'm just using the final hidden state. And at least one thing is there, the final hidden state will have a lot of information about words that come towards the end, like lot, a, movie. But the information from the earlier stages, earlier words would keep on reducing. So that would surely happen. So now, how can I modify this so that I can also try to keep track of other words? I also try to use other words.
So take all the hidden states.
Yes, how would I take all the hidden states?
Attention.
How would I take all the hidden states? Okay. What screen you are seeing right now?
Sentiment classification. No, it's again LSTM. So
LSTM solves vanishing gradient, right?
yes,
sir.
Okay. Yeah, my laptop screen is stuck, but my iPad screen is getting shared. Okay. So here, this is what I was showing. So you start from words x1 to xn. You are seeing whatever am I writing, I suppose. h1, h2 to hn. And you take the final hidden state and pass it through an MLP, like the normal RNN. Now, what Abhilash is saying, we can do better by using all the hidden states, H1 to Hn. But my question was how exactly we will do that?
Sir, by some sort of a weighted sum of the hidden states, we learn those weights as well. Hello.
Yeah. So the simplest way people do is that you take all the hidden states and just take a mean pooling. So you take the mean embeddings of all dimensions. So you have these dimensions and you take the mean of these. Okay. And then pass that mean to the MLP. So something like this. So I have all the hidden states here. And I can take things like I can take max, element wise max, or element wise mean, and create that to get sentence encoding. So I'm using this term sentence encoding because what I'm doing finally, I am taking all the words in the sentence and creating a simple encoding of the entire sentence. It can be just via taking the final hidden state or by composing all the hidden states. And here I'm doing it by either mean or max. And once I have the sentence encoding, then I pass it through an MLP, like normal, my V transpose. And because it is classification, so I don't have to repeat, but this is the same thing. So I have to finally get a vector of dimension. The dimensions are number of classes. Right, and I will apply softmax and I'll use cross entropy loss for backpropagation. So this is like the very simple way in which RNNs can be used for sentence classification. Now, RNNs can be used for many other similar applications. So for example, how would I use RNNs for doing something like sentence similarity? So I have the task of sentence similarity. Whether the sentence S1 and S2 are these similar or not. What is something I can do? So he is smart, or he is a wise man. So how do I say that these two sentences are similar using RNNs? What is the most basic thing you can do?
Cosine similarity of sentence encodings.
Yeah, so I can just pass this through an RNN, get the encoding. Again, you pass it through RNN, get encoding, and compute some similarity over these encodings. Okay. And this sort of structure is generally known as, anybody knows the name? So this sort of structure is also called something like a Siamese structure. So Siamese means as if you are having two copies of the same network. So what you would do in this Siamese architecture, so you would have the same RNN. So you will have in same RNN, you make a copy of this and you will pass he is smart and he is a wise man. And you have all these, the same parameters. You get the hidden states. And you have this HA for sentence A, HB for sentence B. And now you can use these for going forward. So you can even use some generic functions. So you can say, okay, I have HA is my vector HB is my vector. Now let me pass these as input to another matrix. Okay, so HA concatenated with HP become input to my next matrix. And then I compute another thing, and then this gives me some score. This can give me a score between 0 to 1 or whatever. Okay, so I can compose further layers on that. But what is happening? They are sharing the parameters. The two RNNs, they share parameters. Same matrices are being used by both. So for example, here is one that is used for sentence similarity. So you pass both the sentences through RNNs, parameters are shared across each, and then you use a function of the final hidden state, something like say exponent of minus HA minus HP. And similar functions, similar sort of functions you can use, and that can predict the final score. So final score, whether it is similar or not, it can be between 0 to 1. Now this score can vary based on your data set. Because what happens, there are many data sets available for sentence similarity, and they might have different numbers, different range. Some are between 1 to 10, some are between 0 to 5. So accordingly, you have to just play with this range, but otherwise you can use the simple architecture. So RNN can be used for classification, RNN can be used for finding sentence similarity. What else RNN can be used for? So RNN can be used to do the things that I shared last week, and we'll also be sharing this week. And that is like doing part of speech stacking on NER. And actually, with part of speech stacking on NER, you actually use the basic RNN architecture where you are doing output at every step. So something like you have the sentence, the startled cat knocked over the vase, and at each word you're trying to predict what is the part of speech tag. Okay, and underlying is just RNN, and you get the final part of speech tag as the output. And what will be the size of my output vector? What will be the size of my output vector?
1x7.
Sorry?
1x7.
Why 1x7? I am having an output vector at every step.
So one cross part of number of part of speech.
Number of
Yeah. So
part
this will
of
be
speech tags.
number of pause tags, distinct pause tags. That much dimension will be there. And again, I can use the same cross entropy loss. And this architecture I can use for any NLP task that is about, what was the paradigm? We named this paradigm
Sequence labeling.
sequence labeling. So any task where you're doing sequence labeling, you can just use the original RNN architecture where you feed in the words with their embeddings and you predict the classage at every step. Okay. So this can be simply be done by RNN, any sequence labeling task. So for example, here is one nice project that we did. This was early when LSTM was just there. So what we did, you take the review sentence, and you find out what review sentence talk about comparison between products. So for example, this sentence, Nikon Coolpix has better image quality than Canon. Right? This is talking about comparison between two products, Nikon Coolpix and Canon. So what we do is it's a sequence labeler. You try to predict 4-5 categories. So is it product 1? Is it product 2? Is it aspect? is it predicate? Each word. Okay. It's like Nikon Coolpix is product one. They are both product one. Hedge is none of these four, so it has this category none. Better is in predicate. It's an adjective, it's a predicate. Then image quality, they are aspect. So image quality is aspect. Then again comes in none, and Canon comes in product two. So one can map this problem to a sequence labeling problem, and then one can use LSTM for that. So like that, any problem that you see can be taken as sequence labeling problem. One can simply think of applying an LSTM or RNN for that. Now, if you're observing this figure, are you seeing something that is new in this figure?
So we are also introducing the POS
LSTM
tag.
layer.
Direction between the LSTM.
Yes,
Bidirectional.
there are two things. Bidirectional, right? Bidirectional. What is this? What is this sign? Bidirectional. What does it mean? Right? And what is the second thing? This
So
POS.
the POS tag.
POS. What does it mean? Embedding layer word plus POS. Okay. So you don't have to worry about this. I will just give you the basic thing about this embedding layer. So what is the embedding layer? So you have to give this word as input to your RNN or LSTM, right? So you have to feed it in some vector format. So you have to create a vector out of this. And this can be anything, right? So if you have a large data set, you can just start with a, say, one hot vector. I can just feed one hot vector right here. I can feed one hot vector, but people don't do that. Why do feed one hot vector? They are very large. So one hot vector is roughly never used. And or you feed your already trained word embeddings. Okay. Or one can also use some initialized embeddings that have to be learned. So you can learn these again from backpropagation over the task. But for our case, let's say we simply feed the pre-trained word embeddings. Okay. That is the most generic case. You feed the trained word embeddings. Like word2vec and glove, you feed it. But what may also help is to know what is the part of speech tag of that word. What is the grammatical category for this word? And for that, what you can do, you can pass it through an POS tagger. Separately, you pass it through a POS tagger, and various tools like NLTK and Space, they give you POS taggers for English at least. And you get some part of speech tag. So you would know at least that this is a noun. So these two are nouns, okay? And this is an adjective. So you would get this extra information. And you say, okay, I don't want to lose this extra information. I want to put it in my embeddings itself. So what you would do, you would say, okay, I have my 300 dimension embeddings and concatenate it with POS embedding. And that can be simply a one hot. This can be a one hot. So suppose you have 50 part of speech tags. So you have 50 dimensional one hot embedding. So you will have one based on whichever part of the speech tag is present in that word, and zero everywhere else. And you feed this whole thing together as your input to your RNN or LST. So this is about this POS embedding. Is there any question on this? It's a simple thing, but generally very useful for tasks other than part of speech tagging. You can directly feed in POS embedding inside your embedding layer. Okay. So if not, then we have the second question. What is this bidirectional thing? I only saw that RNNs go from left to right. Can they also go bidirectional? But how does that work then? How does bidirectionality work? So what are bidirectional RNNs? So till now, what we have seen is that, so at time t, whatever my state is, ht, it captures information from x1 to xt minus 1 and xt, right? So HT stores information up to from X1 to XT. Now that limits the context that the RNN can use. For some application, I may also want to see what is coming to the right. Why can't I use XT plus 1 to XN to also compute my HT? What is the problem? Can anyone tell? Why can't I use the words to the right of XT to compute HT? Is there a fundamental problem?
Sir, it will be against the language model like generation.
Yeah. So you can say, okay, if I am doing language modeling, what is my task? Given x1 to xt minus 1, predict xt. That is my task. Right. So if I give it already the right context, it does not make sense, right? I'm giving it the context and then asking it to predict that. So yes, so this is a problem with language models. But suppose I'm not doing language modeling, then what? If I'm not doing language modeling, if I'm doing other tasks where the complete input is given to me and I have to just make prediction. So like text classification. I'm given the complete sentence and I have to tell what is the class. Okay. Similarly, part of speech tagging or NER. I am given the entire sentence and I have to just tell what are the part of speech tags of each word. So there's no fundamental limitation for using the right context. I should be able to use right context just like I'm using left context here. Right? So this is the idea that bidirectional RNNs take, that why don't we also use the information from the right hand side? So you want to make it prediction YT, which may depend on the whole input sequence. An example is like sentiment analysis. Okay. So let's take this particular sentence. The movie was terribly exciting. I don't know whether people write that, but yeah, the movie was terribly exciting. Now, what is interesting about this? Suppose I have a forward RNN. So now I'm calling my generic RNN as forward. It goes from left to right. And I start computing the hidden states H1, H2, H3, H4, H5, and so on. Now, what would happen to H4? What would happen to H4 if I start computing in this way, H1, H2, H3, H4? Would it be more negative or positive?
So
In general,
negative.
when you say terrible, yeah, whenever you say terrible, terribly, you mean negative, right? You generally mean a negative sense. And that would be very well captured by already trained embeddings and everything. So then as soon as you compute this hidden state, H4, this would be quite negative. And because you are taking, say, element-wise mean or max, it may tilt the overall sentiment to negative. It may tilt the entire sentiment to negative. And that can very well happen. But is that actually a negative sense in the context?
No.
No, because it is actually behaving as an adjective for exciting, and it's actually enhancing that. So it's saying, okay, terribly exciting. It is actually saying it's quite exciting. So there, you actually need to use the right context also to decipher its meaning, its contextual meaning. That can be done only when you also use the information from the words to the right. So you also have to use information from the words to the right of this context. And that is what bidirectional RNNs aim to do. Now, fine, that's okay. That looks good. We should do that. But how exactly we will do this? So forward RNN was simple. So I had x1, x2 up to xn. I started with h0. I computed h1, h2 up to hn. Right, and I had this matrix U and W. This was my forward RNN. Now, what do I need to do for bidirectional RNN?
Another set of hidden states.
Yeah, so just like I did forward RNN, I can use the same concept to do a backward RNN. Yes, so let's do a backward RNN. So I start from the last word, okay, and hn, and this goes backward. So I have something like hn plus 1 backward, hn, okay. And then let's say I call this w forward. And let me also put x n minus 1, and this was hn minus 1 forward, and this goes, and this goes to give me hn minus 1. Okay, and so on up to I get h1 in backward direction. And let's say even the matrices are different. Okay, even the matrices are different. You may share these, but let's say they are different. So you have W in backward direction, and you have U, and this U also, let's say in general, you can keep it different, but you can also keep it same. So what you're seeing that I can, just like I wrote the equations for forward RNN, I can use the equations for backward RNN. Here I started with h0, I will start with hn plus 1. It can as well be a 0 vector to start with, or a random vector. Okay, and I keep on computing from hn to hn minus 1 up to h1. I keep on computing that, going backward. And I have something computed going forward. I can do both of these. Now, how would I get a bidirectional RNN? So I have to just use these, both of these, forward and backward together. So what I can do, the hidden state for xn, so the hidden state corresponding to xn would be just a combination of forward and backward RNN. So this will be hn forward concatenation hn backward. Okay, so h1 would be h1 forward concatenation h1 backward. So now what is happening, h1, or so any hi forward, hi backward. So this keeps information of the left context, and this keeps information of the right context. And I'm just concatenating these two, and that is giving me my new hidden state. And this is all I have for my bidirectional RNN. Questions about this? Okay, so yeah, just in terms of the picture, you have the forward RNN just like we had. You also get the backward RNN, and you concatenate these two, and this becomes your actual hidden state. Okay, and now this is taking care of both the left and right context. Just you have to ensure that don't use things like this for language model, not for language model. You can use it for classification, you can use it for sequence labeling. And actually it has become quite a norm for that. Whenever you will use RNNs for classification and sequence labeling, you generally use bidirectional RNNs. Okay, So this representation has both left and right context. Any questions on this? So I already shown you this. So you have the same equations for forward and backward RNN, and you just concatenate the hidden states at time step. Okay. And the simplified diagram is this. That is what you were seeing in that picture. You can just write a bidirectional RNN in a diagram in this way, showing that yes, we have directions in left to right and right to left. Okay. And not use it, not applicable to language modeling when only the left context is available. Otherwise, you can use that. Okay. Now there is one more. Yes.
Yeah. So, how exactly the backpropagation is working in this bidirectional model? So, a loss function is coming and it is being distributed for both the W forward and the W backward.
Oh yes. Oh yes. So you see you have a very clear distinction. Your HT is a concatenation of two hidden states, right?
Yeah.
And
So,
this
if
HT will
it's
directly go
whatever
for
the size
open.
will be coming, it is coming with that. Yes, yeah, understood. Yeah.
Yes, yes. So it is not, yeah. So you're keeping both of these. So its dimension will become 2h now. It will be 2h dimension, your HT. And your loss will be propagated back to both of these. And your both matrices will be learned. So there is one more application that is there for this RNN, and this is one of the things I was talking when I was discussing about word embeddings. Now the idea is that how do you handle out of vocabulary words? That words that are not in your vocabulary, some new words that are coming up. What you can do, you can say, okay, I don't know their embeddings, but can't I use a function to compute their embeddings? So what are words? So word like cats. So cats is a combination of like characters CATS. Now what you can think about this, you can think that, okay, can I not pass these characters CATS? Can I not pass these through an RNN or LSTM and get an encoding of this character sequence? So here is what it is being shown. You have this embedding for C, character embedding for C, for A, for T and S, and you pass it through an LSTM. So it can be a bi-LSTM. So you pass them in forward and backward direction, and then you concatenate this. And this final hidden state that you get, so if you're passing in the backward direction, this is your final hidden state. If you're passing in the forward direction, this is your final hidden state. And you can combine these two to get the embedding for cats. Okay. So this way you can actually get the embedding for any word. Now here is some practical questions. So now you may have some practical question that, okay, what are character embeddings? What are character embeddings? How do I train my network? Because if I'm training an LSTM or RNN, I have some parameters. How do I train those parameters? So yeah, what do you think? What are my character embeddings? Is the scenario clear? I'm trying to learn word vectors using RNN. And how I'm doing that, I'm saying, okay, words are nothing but a sequence of characters. So let's take the characters as the input and pass these through an RNN and get the embedding. And I can actually pass them through a bi-LSTM, bidirectional LSTM. So now I should be able to make sense of terms like bi-LSTM, because from RNN we go to LSTM, and LSTM we can now go to bi-LSTM. So I can just pass them through a bi-LSTM. And a general way in which you get a sentence encoding in bi-LSTM is that you take the final hidden state of forward and final hidden state of backward, and you concatenate these. Okay, so you can concatenate this, and that will be your embedding, final embedding. But then the question is, okay, what are the character embeddings I will start with, or what are the character embeddings I will use, and how will I train my network? How will I choose a loss for my network? So what are your answers? Let's say, what are the character embeddings that I can use?
One hot vectors for characters.
Yeah, why not? I can just use one hot vectors. Let's say I just use one hot vectors. Yeah, anyway, just 26, 27 characters, maybe more if I take some symbols, but yeah, they are very few. So I have a small dimensions. Fine. And how will I train my network?
Sir, we can have some standard embedded vectors already, and then we can compare the distance similarity of whatever word we have encoded using our BiLSTM and compare it with the standard embedding.
Hmm. So you are saying what I can do, for example, when I'm training, I get the embedding here, the final embedding, and I compare with actual embedding of cats. Compare with the embeddings of cats. And my loss can be y minus y hat based on MSE loss. Right? Is that what you were saying?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So that is also valid here. So you can compare with the actual embedding of cats, and you compute your loss. So what would happen finally is that your network would start to generate embeddings that are actually similar to what you had learned, but it will also generate embeddings for new words that were not in your initial data. So that is something that you can do. Okay. Sure. So yeah. And then in general, you can also, with RNNs, you can also do multi-layers. So what is multi-layer is that you can go deep. You can go deep. So you have got the initial sentence x1, x2 to xn. You got the initial h1, h2 to hn, fine. But then you say, okay, I want to go deeper. So I will say h1, this is first layer. And then you again just pass this h1 to the next layer. So for this hidden state RNN layer 2, the input is this. So input is RNN layer 1. This acts as the input. And like that, it has its own W2, and this you can think as U, whatever, 1 or 2. Let's say 2. So you can further take it as input and go from one hidden state to another hidden state. Right? And you can go for multiple layers, W2, W3. So you get H1, H2, H3, and you just take the input at the last layer. So use this last layer for your next task, for tasks. So that is where you can use multi-layer. So what we saw that we had this simple RNN that also is called vanilla RNN, where you just pass xi, xt, ht minus 1, you get ht. We learned that, and then we said, okay, you can do multiple things with that. You can make GRU, you can make LSTMs. They are more complicated units. Then you can do bidirectionality by RNN, by LSTM. And you can also do multi-layer. Okay, so you can have a multi-layer by LSTM. So whenever it is told what is multi-layer by LSTM, it should be, you should be able to visualize that now. What is multi-layer by LSTM? Fine. Any question at this point?
So for multi-layer bidirectional LSTM, will the hidden layers be different for forward and backward
Yes, of
backward
course.
direction?
Of course. So you would have bidirectionality here. So you would have HN1 forward, you would have HN1 backward. You would have both. And this would be like just normal. So once you have seen how to get bidirectional, you can get multi-layer bidirectional. It's not an issue at all.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Sir, I had one question regarding you told some time back that in BiLSTM both the forward hidden state and the backward hidden state they can have shared parameters. So which one fares better? Does like the shared parameter thing work better, or having different parameters generally works better?
Many times you have this, you answer this question based on the size of your data set. If your data set is small, you try to keep parameters shared. But if it is not, you try to keep them as.
Okay, so like it depends on how many number of parameters you want to keep finally.
Generally. But by default, you would tend to go for different parameters. You would not share them. So you would say I will have different parameters. But of course, if your task is such that you don't have much data, then you say, okay, let's try sharing the parameters.
Sure.
Okay. Sure. So now this is one of the pictures that you generally show in the beginning, but now I'm showing it after telling you like quite a few applications of RNNs in NLP. So the left-hand side is what is a simple neural network. Right? So you feed a fixed dimension input, goes to a hidden state, and you get a fixed dimension output. A simple neural network. Now, what we started doing with, oh, this actually does not show one thing. This has something missing. Okay, so, okay, but yeah, let's see. Let's try to understand from here. So, what we saw, did we see this particular scenario where your input is of, so here it means input can be of any length. input can be of variable length, and output will be fixed dimension, right? So this is like a many-to-one framework. So which application use that?
Text
Generation task.
classification.
Text classification. Okay, good. Now there is something that is missing, that is you may have outputs at every step. Okay, so your input is variable length, but you have output at every step. And what applications did we see for that?
Sequence labeling.
Any sequence labeling task. Part of speech tagging, name identity recognition, and so on. Now there are two other things. Okay, there are two other things. One is one-to-many, where input is fixed, but output can be a variable length. Second is your input is variable length, and output is also a variable length. And that means they don't have a direct correlation that, okay, so output length can be 10, input can be 5, input can be 8, output can be 7. So it's not that output would be of the same dimension or same length as n. Okay. So there are two other scenarios. So let's see. What about this scenario, one-to-many? What kind of applications have this? Yeah, give me some application. It should be easy. Input is fixed dimension, but output is variable length. What about image? So input is an image, fixed dimension vector, and you have to generate a caption for this, and that can be of variable length. Okay, what application about this? Input is of variable length and output is of also variable length. That should be easier.
Translation.
Translation. This is translation. What other applications can you think of?
So video captioning.
Yeah, it can be video captioning where you have a sequence of frames. Yes. Similarly, it can be ASR, speech recognition. Right. And what about like pure NLP applications apart from translation? Chatbot. Input is a variable length and output is also variable length. So input is the context till now, and then you have to give a response. So generally, all these applications, they tend to use this particular framework. And this is what we will see now. This is what we will see now. How is that many-to-many framework is done? What is there in many-to-many framework? And actually, once you understand about this generic RNN, you have to just take it from there. Okay, how it will be used for a chatbot sort of scenario or a machine translation sort of scenario. So the foundation is about RNN, what that we have already seen. And now it's just about how do we use that for many-to-many scenario. So this is what I will start today, and I'll maybe just give a few initial slides. And this in general we call sequence to sequence, seq to seq. is the common name for this. Many times also people call encoder decoder. Because you have given a sequence, you encode the sequence, input sequence, and from the encoding you try to decode to a sequence. So this is also called an encoder decoder architecture. So yeah, so we have seen input then sequence to a fixed size vector like classification, and input sequence to output sequence of the same length. That was like sequence labeling. Now we may have to map the input sequence to an output sequence that is not necessarily of the same length, like translation, question answering, chatbots. Summarization is one application where your input and output can be of variable length. You have an input document and you have to get to an output document. So for all these applications, you have to use a sequence-to-sequence framework. So we will take an example of machine translation. So what we do is that you have a sentence X in one language, say source language, and you want to translate to another sentence Y in the target language. So this is something like from French to English. So now the question is, okay, how do I take these RNN model, whatever RNN I have learned, how do I take this RNN and use that for this translation task? Okay. So before I show you the slides, let's try on paper. So you have a source sentence X and you want to generate a sentence Y. The source and this is target. And they are both sequences. X1 to Xn and this will be Y1 to Ym. So their lengths would be different. And this is my task. How would I use RNNs for doing that? So I want to hear from you. How would I use RNNs for this? What can I do to begin with? This can be, say, was one French, and this can be English.
Get the sentence encoding for X and use that as the initial hidden state for RNN of Y.
Wow. So as simple as that. So what I will do, I'll just do my normal thing, H1 to Hn. And let's say Hn becomes the sentence encoding for my source and give it as the initial state for generation, right? Give it as the initial state for generation of the target sentence. So now I have this as my initial state for generation. How would I generate this sentence now? If I have the initial state Hn, how would I generate a sentence? Sentence encoding for X. Now I have to use that to generate a sentence. How do I do that? Have we seen how to generate sentences using RNNs?
Sir, we can use some reference beginning of sentence token or something to trigger the RNN to start generating the tokens for Y.
Let's use a start token. Okay, and use this hidden state in a start token, and that would give me that would generate something. That would generate something, and that would generate some Y1. That would actually generate a vector that would be in the same dimension as the vocabulary of my target. And there I can choose the word with the maximum probability. I can choose the word with the maximum probability. And I have generated a word already. I generated a word and now feed that word again to the next step now. So now do you remember where we did this? In which application we were doing that?
Next token generation.
Yeah, it's something like sentence generation using language modeling. Language modeling. So you see, so that what I'm saying is that sequence to sequence is nothing new. I have learned how to do sentence encoding. I have learned how to do generation. Yes, I have learned both of these already. So it's just about combining these two. It's just combining these two parts, saying, okay, I have sequence to sequence. Fine, you just encode the sequence, input sequence, source sentence, and use that to decode the target sentence. Okay. Now, what we will see, what is crucial here is that, okay, there are two phases. One is training phase, another is the runtime or test phase. So training phase is more about how to train the parameters. What are the parameters and how do I train the parameters? How do I train the parameters? And test runtime phase is okay. How do I use my network, my learned parameters to generate the target sentence or sequence? Okay, so there are two parts. How do I train parameters and how do I use my learned parameters to generate the target sequence? So let us see that step by step. So what you have in sequence to sequence, you have an input sequence X that may have n X words and output sequence may have n Y words. And what you actually use encoder RNN. Okay, so encoder will take the sequence, input sequence as input. It will emit a context C. That will be like the embedding, source embedding, or source encoding. Source encoding. So this you can see as a vector that is summarizing the input sequence. This can be just the final hidden state or can be a function of final hidden state. You may, for example, use another matrix to go from here to final hidden state HN to something that is like an H0 for the next one, decoding one. You can use a learnable parameter W. And this many times is useful. For example, both the hidden states may have different dimensions. This can be H dimension, can be some D1, this dimension can be D2. If the dimensions are different for both the RNNs, you can just use a matrix to translate, to transform from one dimension to another dimension. Also, they can be different languages. So this can be English, this can be French. And you don't want to directly go from English to French directly. So you say, okay, I will have a learnable matrix parameter. So that will go from one embedded dimension to another embedded dimension. So you can directly use hidden state for things like summarization. So if your task is summarization, I will say, okay, I am just operating in the same language, so maybe I can directly use HN. But if I'm doing translation, maybe I will want to pass it through another learnable parameter. So it can be either the final hidden state or a function, simple function of that. And second thing is a decoder RNN. That is, it is starting from context C, and it will generate the output sequence. Okay. And in general, so innovation is that the NX and NY can vary from each other. That is what you see. So what you do, you get pass through an encoder RNN, you get the encoding C, and use the encoding to decode. Okay. So in this picture, it is showing in a more generic term, that is this context can actually be input to all the steps. So in general, you can have your RNN where this context becomes the input at every step of decoding. And that is possible. You need to have just additional parameters for this. Okay. So that is possible. You can use context for giving input to the hidden state at every step. That is fine. But in the basic setup, what you would do, you would not have any of this. You would not have any of this, and you will say, okay, I just pass the context to this get initial hidden state, and then I keep on generating. That is the most basic. But in general, you can use context to any other hidden states. Okay. So encode RNN. So you can use the last state of the encode RNN as the input sequence, and you can provide it as input to the decoder RNN. And decoder RNN is nothing but taking this C and generating a sequence. Okay. And now here is what it would look for a translation system. So here there is a French sentence. That means the poor don't have any money, right? You have an encoder RNN that gives you the final state, that is, and that becomes the input to the decoder RNN. And you feed something like a star token, and you take the argmax, you get the word like the, feed it next point, argmax poor, feed it again, don't, and say. And you stop whenever you generate a token like and or EOS. Any of these tokens are used. EOS means end of sentence, or it can be an end token. So you would have one of these tokens in your vocabulary. So you have to, once you generate this, you stop. So this is what we are just showing what would happen at the test time. At test time. Looks quite easy. Looks quite easy. Okay. Use it for summarization. I can like long text to short text. I can use for dialogue, previous utterance to next utterance. So let's look more closely on how this is used for neural machine translation. So machine translation is an example of something called a conditional language model. What I mean by a conditional language model. So see, if you think about machine translation again, what you are doing, you are again trying to predict what would be the word next step, and you want to do it at multiple steps, right? Next word of my target sequence. You keep on decoding it. And why we are calling conditional? Because there is a condition that I want to decode it based on input sentence X. So this is what we can say. So I want to compute a sequence Y. So X and Y both are sequences. I want to compute sequence Y conditioned on X, and something like the first word, Y1 given X, Y2 given Y1 and X, Y3 given Y1, Y2 and X, and so on. So probability of YT given whatever I have seen in the sequence and my context X. So this is what you're trying to directly calculate or want to optimize. And to do that, what we generally take, we say, okay, I will need to use a very large corpus. That's very crucial for NMT. You need to have a very big parallel corpus. What do I mean by a parallel corpus? I need to have a sentence in English sentence, S1, and its corresponding translation, say SEN, corresponding SFR, say corresponding French sentence. Okay, so I need to have a large parallel corpus. Now that's where it also creates a bottleneck, like why translation is not good for some of the languages, because they may not have a large parallel corpus already available. So it's a huge effort even to build such a corpus. But can you think of some simple sources from where you can try to create a parallel corpus, say between English and Hindi? What can be some sources from which you can create a parallel corpus? There are
Sir,
quite a few
parliament
sources.
sessions that are
Yeah, parliament sessions. Generally, the proceedings are translated into other languages. So from English and other languages. And there are many other, so for example, many websites, many government websites have both English and Hindi versions. Many websites have this, and so on. So there are quite a few places from which one can try and create. So getting a parallel corpus is the first thing. Now, once you have a parallel corpus, you have to do the training. Now, what happens in training? You see at the input, you are just doing the encoding. I am taking the x1 to xn and just trying to do this encoding. Nothing else. I'm not trying to generate anything here. I'm just getting an encoding. So I'll have just U and W matrices. Okay, U encoder and W encoder matrices. Now, once I have this WE, once I have this UE and WE, this gives me the encoding of this input HN. This feeds here, and again I have to use two other matrices, say U decoder and W decoder, right? And I have to use a V decoder because I have to also now generate sentence. So I have to use three matrices in the decoder IN. And if I use star token, suppose the parameters are all randomly initialized, I get some vector here, I get some vector here, and I can take what is the negative log probability of the actual word that I should generate. So I should generate he because that is the word in the parallel corpus. This sentence should translate into he hit me with a pie. So I should generate he, right? So I will see in my dimension what is the negative log probability of he, and that becomes my loss. And fine. But now next I pass he. I don't pass the word that is having the highest probability here. Okay. What is this called? What is this phenomena called? We gave this a name. So in
Teacher
training,
forcing.
I generate teacher forcing. I call this teacher forcing. So in training, I use teacher forcing. I actually gave the actual word, not the one with the maximum probability at my output. And I feed it, and I keep on doing these things, and I compute loss. I keep on computing loss for at every step. And I have got the loss. I just sum over the loss and use that to backpropagate. And now this is important. Now this backpropagation will train all my 5 matrices. This even my UE and HN, there is no signal at the input side that can train these. Okay. So they were again trained with the loss, the backpropagation loss at the decoder side. So all my parameters are being trained simultaneously. So this is like a single system, optimizing single system, and the backpropagation operates end to end. Okay. Well. So this is the training, and what happens at the test time? At test time, what I will do, I'll start from start. I give the HN of the encoder as the input, and I get the maximum probability word like he as the output. And then I feed that at the next step, get an argmax, and keep on doing that until I get some end token. And I keep on doing that. At each step of the decoder, I just take the word. Okay. I just take the word with the max probability, and I stop whenever I generate end, or whenever I reached a limit. Say I have generated already k words and I don't want to generate longer sentence, then also I can stop. Because sometimes you may never get an end token. So you cannot generate infinitely. Right? So you put certain conditions to stop. And this is the basic model for sequence to sequence. You train using a large data set. Very important, you need to have a large data set, large input data set, because you are training a lot of parameters. And you decode. At the time of decoding, you take the word with the maximum probability. That's all. So this is your sequence to sequence. And this method of taking the word with the maximum probability is called greedy decoding. But that has its problems. which I think I'll discuss next. I won't talk about it today. But any questions at this point? Because yeah, there may be too many things already. Any questions about this till now? So we just touched upon what is sequence to sequence model. And I did not teach anything new. I just said you can see it as a combination of encoder, like we were doing for text classification, plus a language model. Right? You just combine these two together and train end to end. Just train end to end. And that becomes your sequence to sequence. And it has much more applications. You can see there are a lot of applications. And we saw you can just train it by taking the loss from your task, say that you are decoding the correct word. And once you have trained, you can just take the max probability word. This is greedy decoding. You just decode the max probability word of the output. And this should already give you some working system. Next time we will talk about, okay, how can we do something different from greedy decoding? So this is what we will see. But are there any questions at this point? Okay, sure. So as I said, next week I won't take a class. 16th is a holiday, and 15th I'm taking the class test. So 16th there won't be interaction. So we will have the interaction on 23rd. In between, if you have questions, but yeah, we will float the lectures. So if you have questions, you can email me, you can put on Piaja, and we'll try to answer. Is there any specific feedback about the course, the way it is going, and anything I can do different? You want to tell, you can do that now. Anything? Okay. Anything that we can do to help you? Okay. So I suppose not much. So fine then. So thanks for joining. We will upload the lectures for this week, and we have a class test Monday 2 to 3. So thanks.